Hello and welcome back to my channel. I'm so glad that you're able to join me today. I'm going to be carrying on with my series of addressing the comments that I got underneath this video, and one of the most frequently typed things underneath that video was something in the vein of, well, they change their clothes every day because they never bathed, so they stank to high heaven. It's a very popular conception that the people of the past never bathed and therefore exuded an ungodly stench. But nothing could be further from the truth. I think there are a couple of reasons that can explain why this myth is so popular. One of them is a simple language barrier, and we're going to talk about that in a second. The other is that we are desperate to feel as though we are better than our ancestors. We desperately want to feel that we are more advanced and more civilized and more evolved than the people of the past. A really great way of supporting this narrative that we are so much better than our ancestors is by portraying our ancestors as dirty and smelly people. I'm not saying that everybody who typed something about people not bathing in the past was doing so with these direct intentions, but I do believe that this desire to feel as though we're better than our ancestors is one of the reasons that this myth is so pervasive. And part of the reason I feel this way is because it's not just a pervasive myth now. People in the 19th century thought that they were cleaner and smelled better than the people in the 18th century. People in the 18th century said the same about people in the 17th century, and so on and so forth. So it's a very old myth. And every generation seems to think that they are cleaner and better than the generation that came before. And I think that's why. I think we want to feel as though we are better than somebody else. And of course, the people in the past can't defend themselves because they're all dead. Another reason that this myth is so pervasive is because of the language barrier that I mentioned earlier. It's true that you will read accounts from the past of people only bathing once a month, once every 2 months, what have you. And it's true that people were not taking full-on immersive baths as frequently as we do now, but that doesn't mean they weren't getting clean. For example, Elizabeth I is said to have taken a bath once a fortnight or every 2 weeks, whether she needed it or not. Now, at this time in the 16th century, taking a full immersive bath was not necessarily about getting clean. It was about health. It was something that an invalid would do. So whether she needed it or not does not mean whether or not she smelled bad. It means whether or not she was ill. You also have to bear in mind that if you don't have piped water in your house, taking an immersive bath suddenly becomes a very big task. You're either going to have to make many trips to the well to fill up a bathtub, or you're going to have to be working the pump for a long time in order to get enough water to fill a bathtub. Not only that, but you're also going to have to heat a lot of water. So that means filling up all of the kettles and saucepans with water, boiling that water on the fire or on the stove, and then pouring that into the bath and doing that repeatedly until it's gotten warm enough to be comfortable. If taking an immersive bath was such an effort, odds are you wouldn't feel inclined to do it all that often, especially not when you knew that you could get just as clean by simply giving yourself a rub down with a washcloth or sponge that has been repeatedly dipped in soapy water. And that's what they did. This book from 1891 says, and I quote, "The simplest and most convenient bath is the ordinary sponge bath." This was how people bathed in an era before plumbing. So while it's true that they wouldn't have been taking full-on immersive baths very often, that doesn't mean that they weren't washing themselves. They were still getting perfectly clean. The sponge bath method is a lot easier, it's a lot less wasteful, and it's a lot less time-consuming than filling up an entire bathtub. So that's what a majority of people did. That said, though, by the end of the 19th century, most houses, especially in urban areas, do have piped water, and you see a sharp increase in people taking full-on immersive baths or showers multiple times a week. And they were obsessive about cleanliness and bathing. They viewed it not only as something for beauty, but also as critical to your health. Now, I'm not going to ask you to take my word for this, because I want you to hear this straight from the horse's mouth. I have here a collection of books from the 19th and early 20th centuries, all of which talk about the importance of bathing. So I'm going to read you several passages from these books, so you can draw your own conclusions. We're going to start with this one. This is The Principles and Practice of Modern Surgery, and it dates to the year 1842. On page 115, in the chapter about the king's evil, or as it is known today, the scrofula, it says, quote, "Daily washing and friction of the skin are as beneficial to the scrofulous as they are to everyone else." This implies that daily bathing was important for the health of everybody, not just the ill. Next, we're going to look at this one, Common School Physiology, and it dates to the year 1846. It has an entire chapter on the necessity of frequent bathing. The structure and purpose of the skin, and the constant removal and reproduction of the cuticle, the functions of the oil glands and perspiratory system afford the groundwork for inferring the necessity of bathing. Baths are useful for three purposes: to promote cleanliness, to preserve health, and to remove disease. It also details different methods of bathing. For example, bathing may be partial or general. The water used may be cold, temperate, tepid, warm, or hot. A person may apply it to his system with a sponge, it may be poured upon him, or he may immerse himself in it. The simplest mode of bathing is to apply water to a small extent of surface by means of a wetted sponge, and after being wiped dry, again cover with the dress. In this way, the whole body may be speedily subjected to the influence of water and to no less useful friction. The chapter finishes by telling the reader how often he ought to bathe. As regards the frequency of bathing, the face and neck, from their necessary exposure to the atmosphere and the impurities which the latter contains, should receive at least 2 washings in every 24 hours. One of them should be with soap. The feet, from the confined nature of the coverings which are worn over them, require at least 1 washing in 24 hours. The armpits, from the detention, as well as from the particular properties of the secretions, at least once in 24 hours. And the hands and the arms as many times as may seem proper. The whole person should be bathed every 2nd day without fail, and every day if possible. Next up we have Physical Culture. Now this edition is from 1905, but it was first printed in 1891. On pages 122 and 123 it says, "The chief office of the skin is not to cover the body. The skin is an organ involving most important functions. It must eliminate many ounces of effete matter from the body daily, or much disease-engendering material is left in the blood and in the lungs, and other organs are overtaxed in adding to their own duties the work which should be performed by the skin. The pores of the skin, through which should escape so much of the impurities of the body, frequently become clogged. At other times, they become too active, and an unnatural amount of perspiration takes place." This book informs the reader that the laws of health require that one should bathe daily. Next, we're going back to this one, the People's Common Sense Medical Advisor, from 1895. It says, "Cleanliness is next to godliness, and is essential to the health and vigor of the system. When we consider the functions of the skin with its myriads of minute glands, innumerable little tubes employed in removing the worn-out, useless matter from the system, we cannot fail to appreciate the utility of frequent bathing with soap and water." This book advises that, strictly, a person should bathe once every 24 or 48 hours. Next, we're on to the Science of Human Life. This one is rather disturbingly emblazoned eugenics across the title, but it actually has very little to do with eugenics. Eugenics was popular at the time this book was published, so they're just putting that there to kind of catch the reader's eye because it's the in thing. But there's pretty much nothing about eugenics in this book. It's just a kind of a medical guide. So, don't be fooled. Now, this edition was published in 1920, although it was originally published in 1904. It advises the reader that the bath should be taken at regular intervals. These, on an average, should be every 2nd or 3rd day, though there are many individuals representing the very finest types of physical manhood who look upon their bath as an altogether indispensable operation of everyday life. So, clearly, they bathed a lot. Now, I can already feel you gearing up to type, "But Adelaide, what about their hair?" The Preservation of the Hair, 3rd edition, published 1910. Page 87, shampooing. This is a very refreshing operation, and those with plenty of strong hair, provided that it is naturally greasy, may indulge it with impunity, say, once a month. Ah! Hold it, hold it, hold it. Don't you dare comment a thing because I know that sounds disgusting, but just wait. There's more. They must, however, observe the precautions laid down in the section on wetting the hair. A tendency to dryness or brittleness forbids recourse to it. The reason for this distinction is that shampooing preparations all contain alkalis, and some in the injurious form of liquid potash, albeit they are freely diluted with the water. The action of the alkali upon the grease of the hair is to make such a chemical change that it will turn grease into soap, and if it is not too strong, its virulence is neutralized, so that the hair is not exposed to its reaction. But in the case of dry hair, where there is little or no natural grease, the full action of the alkali is exerted upon the already feeble hair. Now yes, I know that at first glance that sounds disgusting, but much like with bathing, there is a little bit of a language barrier here, because they are not saying that you should only clean your hair once a month. They're saying you should only wet it and shampoo it once a month, because that is a very damaging process for your hair. It was then, and it still is now. We shampoo our hair way too often these days. So they had other ways of getting their hair clean. For example, on page 68 it says, "Cleanliness of the scalp and hair is eminently desirable and necessary, but it can be accomplished by spirit washes, such as Formula Number 2. And if the brush is used frequently and kept scrupulously clean, the hair will want washing much less often. Moreover, the spirit used in washing seems to take up some of the grease from the scalp and the adjacent hair, and to distribute it down the long hair when the whole is brushed." When they say that if the brush is used frequently and kept scrupulously clean, the hair will want washing much less often, they're referring to a phenomenon that when you brush your hair, the brush will pick up dirt and grease, and it will move it along the hair to moisturize the hair. That's why your head produces grease. It's to keep your hair healthy. That's why they would brush their hair 100 times a night. It keeps your hair very clean. Also, if your hair is used to being washed every day, it's going to be producing oils and grease at a dramatically increased rate, much more quickly than it needs to be. If your hair is used to being washed once a week, once every 2 weeks, once a month, it's going to dramatically slow down its rate of producing oils. So your hair is not going to get dirty up until however long it is usually in between your washing. I wash my hair once a week, and it's been a week since I've washed my hair, and it does not look dirty because my hair is used to it. So, Victorians washed themselves very frequently. They washed their hair less frequently, but we wash our hair too frequently today. And they had other ways of getting their hair clean, such as brushing and using different types of dry shampoos, as we have shown. Lastly, I would like to pose a question to you watching this video. If you neglect to shower every day, do you suddenly begin to emit such a stench that you need to change your clothes 5 times a day or it will become overpowering? If you do, you should probably get that looked at by a doctor, because most people don't become intolerably smelly after a day or two of not bathing. So even if the Victorians weren't bathing themselves or washing themselves every single day, it's unlikely that they would have absolutely reeked to high heaven, because people don't smell that bad that quickly. I really hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, please leave them down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe and turn on the notification bell. If you would like to support this channel on Patreon, there will be a link down below. No hard feelings if you can't. However, there will be hard feelings if you don't follow me on Instagram, because unlike Patreon, Instagram is free. And my Instagram will also be linked below, along with my email in case you want to get in touch with me. A huge thank you to Mary Royal, Sandra White, Emily Donnelly, Kit Kat Stitch, V Birchwood, Kiara Craft, Patricia Bentley Fay, and Amanda Martin for sponsoring this channel on Patreon. I hope to see you again next time. Bye-bye.